Hey everyone, welcome back to our weekly community hangout. I think for today we're just going to be going over the 212 issues. We have a couple of big ones that we want to get out. I think on probably Monday. I'm currently working on getting them all merged, tested.
Yeah, David, I have something to talk about, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
But
That's
first, I've got this cool Batobi T-shirt on. But before I say anything, I really wanted to mention my throat is kind of dry. I wanted to drink. Oh, that's really cold ice water. Hold on a second before I finish drinking it. Let me. Now that I just drank all that ice water, I'm really quite cold. Get some a little warmth in. Gotta warm up a little bit here. Come on. Oh. Yeah, that's better. It's
you look warm now.
That's some serious ice water. Yeah. Whew. Oh, I'm a little stressed out, a little nervous about presenting, so I'm just gonna relieve a little stress too. Yeah, all right. I'm ready to go now. So what I wanted to share is that BitHub, we have finally the swag and the amount of points. There should be an announcement next week. I'll go through the points for the rewards. You can get all the swag that I was currently showing off, except for the stickers. I didn't show that. All you need is 17 points, and there's about like 20 people who will get all of it right away. So if you're on the leaderboard, you've got 17 points, which is all the way down to here. You're eligible, and we'll just make sure you have your address in, and we will send you all of this fabulous gear. So big thanks to everybody who is at 17 points and everybody who's kind of climbing their way there. The best way is just asking questions, submitting pull requests, that kind of thing.
Hey guys.
Yeah, speak of the devil, Kyle's been working on BitHub. He will be having a release article for it next week. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. And now that I have my screen shared, I mentioned, I think last week I mentioned how I would fix the IE8 issues. I remember I talked about the issue, maybe it was a different, I talked about improving the performance overall.
Yeah, I don't remember an IE8 specific.
Yeah, I think, okay, so someone pointed out that maybe it was on the forums or somewhere that CanJS IE8 performance was rather slow. I think it's this one. No, it was not that. But someone IE8 was really slow, and the reason IE8 was slow is it's kind of a long explanation. Let me kind of remind everybody, explain why IE8 and lower was so slow. The big reason had to do with node lists. So to remind everybody what node lists are, if you have a template like this where you have directly nested sections, so like person, and then there's another section inside of it, and another section inside of that, we kind of have to keep our own hierarchy of elements, and the reason is so like this div up here would have a bunch of child nodes. Some of those child nodes would be in different sections. We have to keep our, long story short, we have to keep our own, we kind of have to know about these lists. We kind of keep a nested list of lists. I'll kind of show what that structure looks like. Yeah, so this person would contain like the first element, and then it would have, instead of an element here, it would basically have a pointer to the array of elements that the node lists, that a list of elements that hobbies has. And then it would have the period and the line break, and then it would have a kind of pointer to what if has, and then finally the line break here. The reason is because if person became falsy, hobbies might still be true, because hobbies might be, you know, not person dot hobbies, but there might be hobbies somewhere else in the stack or in the scope. If person were to be removed, we need to remove all of these elements inside here and remove and tear down this binding. So what we need to be able to do is walk and remove elements, and then if we find a child node list, remove that guy's elements or girl's elements, and tell it to remove its event binding. So the problem with IE was what happens is person kind of would render all of its elements, like, so this guy would, each would render its elements, and then label would render its elements, and then person would kind of render them all together. And we needed to go through all of the rendered elements, or all of person's elements, and check, hey, does this element belong in another node list? No, it doesn't. Does this span that you would find belong in another node list? Yes, it does. Okay, so I'm going to point, instead of to that span, I'm going to remove that span originally and then point to that node list, right? And just keep going through and kind of creating this nested structure. The way we would do this is we would label each element. When each rendered these spans, it would label, it would kind of tag them saying it belonged to, it would tag them saying they belonged to this, the each node list, so that person could later find it. Now that works great, except that in IE8 you cannot add a tag to a text node. So if these were text nodes inside of here, if these spans weren't here and these were just text nodes, we can't actually label it. So instead of kind of it's like jQuery data is kind of how it works. Instead of just putting a just labeling the element with kind of an ID of the node list it belongs to, we would have to have an array of elements that kind of belong to which node list, and then linearly search through every single text node in IE8 and figure out which text node it belongs to. So instead of like an order one operation, it was like linear with every single live bound text node in the entire application. So that was really bad. So the fix to this, I'll kind of show where this code is. So this is all in node lists for the most part. All this code between this live stuff happens between live, which kind of would create the node lists and add new nodes to them and remove nodes and update node lists, and node lists. So the same function still exists because it needs to be there for things that are not stash. There was this nest list function that did that looking up, that, hey, find me this element node list. So it would go through each element in the list, try to get the ID for that node, and see if that ID is in this node map that contains the reference. But ID, and here's was the big problem, ID had to go like basically linear through the entire text node map and see if and then return the looking for that ID instead of just order oneing it. So the fix to this, there's kind of the fix is you can't really avoid, at least not easily, you can't really avoid having to do this like linear lookup. But instead of every text node in the entire page, I limited it to only having, like limiting it to only the text nodes that are kind of directly nested within a parent. And this whole nesting, this whole like running of this code here doesn't happen unless you explicitly have a nested child node. So I'll kind of walk through the code that makes all of this happen real quick. The first thing is stash needs to, while it's parsing the template, figure out if you actually have a nested node list or not. So this happens in stash. And by the way, stop me if anybody has questions. And you guys are still there. My internet hasn't cut out, right?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, good. I'm always afraid of that. It's happened too many times. Okay, so stash, now there's an additional kind of state it tracks, which is, I call it the section element stack, basically, which lets you know is what, you only want to know if you're nested. You're only nested if there's a section, and without another element being present, there's another section. So this is not a directly nested, like, kind of live binding of this. So we don't have to worry.
Could you say again? I didn't follow that. You're only nested if there's two?
Yeah, you're only worry about directly nested with there's not an element between like one section and the subsection.
I see. Okay.
Right? So this is not directly nested, but this is. The reason is because anything live in here, it doesn't matter because this guy's span stays the same. Like hobbies, it just has to know about the span, what's going inside the span. It doesn't really have to reflect. It doesn't. It can go and just remove. Hobbies will just remove its span element, and the removed event will fire on this live binding and take care of it. So we don't worry about that. So I essentially keep a stack that all it just says is section. If there's a section, it adds. If you go into a section, it just pushes section on the stack. I can show where that happens. So this is the function that gets called when there is a section. And the mode and kind of the stash part, and you can see here when it checks if there's if it's starting a section, it will push on the section element stack section, and then when an element is started, actually when an element is ended, if it's not like a single element, a self-closing element, it pushes element on the stack. And then when the element is removed, a close, that's when an element close tag is found, it pops the element off the stack. And then also when you close a section, we pop off the stack. So the stack is really just going to contain like element, section, section, element, element, section, kind of that kind of thing as the nesting progresses. So what we pass to Mustache Core as an additional state information is not only the tag you're in, the attribute you're in if you're in one, but also if you're directly nested. And you're directly nested if your the top of the stack is section, right? Because that means you're in another section. So if you're starting another section and this copy state is called, it will pass to make renderer, which is really make live binding branch renderer. This is kind of what sets up the live binding stuff. It will get a directly nested pass to it if it's a directly nested section. So I changed Mustache Core I changed this to now it will create the node list, but it will, it kind of had, I added a new flag to node list that say like, if they're kind of the parent section, if they're the topmost section. Otherwise, you can register them with a parent. Like if there's a parent section, you will register a child with that parent section. So node list now, when you register a node list, basically create your node list, if you pass it a parent, it adds maybe not the best name right now, but it basically on a parent node list, it says, hey, here's one of your child node lists. So I know about the child node list now. And I don't have to, if there are no child node lists, I don't have to go through and try to look up the elements anymore. I just skip it. So it's essentially just creating a node list now every time right away and kind of pre-registering a parent-child relationship. I had to change live in a few places, so now live can be passed a node list and doesn't have to create its own node list. So this is nicer for performance reasons because it'll already have the parent on it. And then eventually, node list, when the node list is updated now, when it needs to replace all of its elements, there's kind of two different types of node lists now. So node list APIs actually stayed the same. I didn't remove node lists. It's just there's a different two types of node lists. There's ones with replacements now, which are basically child node lists. I probably could have called it child node lists. If it's got a child node list, then it does something similar to what it was doing before, but instead it's got an isolated scope. It only has to look up, it kind of still does this mapping, but the elements that it's looking for in IE8 are limited to only child elements of the immediate node and not every single element live text node in the entire page. I don't know if that makes sense. It gets a little hairy towards the end in terms of the explanation, but the good thing, I don't know if David, if you've ran the test yet, but it should improve performance.
I fixed the test. Actually, it's almost done.
What?
I fixed all the tests for the other libraries too, so they're...
Okay, but have you ran this against an app yet to see if...
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
That's the next step.
Yeah, let me know when you do that, because that should be interesting, right? So, it's going from it's nice. This should improve performance, initialization performance of our templates considerably, because now it doesn't, in Stash, now it doesn't have to walk through, it doesn't have to do any replace, it doesn't have to, every time we would loop through every single element that was live bound to see if there was a nested list. Now we know if there's a nested list or not, and are only looping if there's a directly nested list, which is pretty huge in terms of performance. Now the other way that we can get much faster initialization, and this is something that Matt could help with eventually, is when we move to asynchronous removed and inserted events, and we start using DOM modification events to provide those events. Right now, CanJS, anytime any element is inserted or removed, we're actually going to it and triggering an inserted or removed event, which kind of sucks because we're touching every element again on insertion or remove. But with a DOM mutation events, we could prevent that and let the browser take care of that. The only problem is this would be a breaking change and has to wait till 3.0. It's not a hard change, it's just it would make those events asynchronous. But it's probably something we should do pretty soon if we want to have really fast initialization performance of our templates. So that's all I have about this. Any questions? All right, well, no questions. David, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much else to go over. Maybe I'll quickly share my screen. So this, what we've been talking about was issue or pull request 1048. It'll almost, all the tests, I'm just running them again, they should be passing, and then after this I'm going to test it in an actual application and see if it fixes the IE performance. We had a whole bunch of pull requests, so there's a couple of issues and bugs that are going to be fixed in 2.1.2, which hopefully is going to get released on Monday or Tuesday, probably in Tuesday. Unless didn't live bind, so Eli, where is it? Eli fixed that. So the unless helper now does live binding. We had a lot of documentation that got fixed, and also from other people. So thanks a lot for that.
Is Eli on? Can you explain that fix? He's not.
Which one? Oh yeah, I bounced it off with him too. So for the unless fix, what happened was it swapped out options.fn and inverse, and whenever the live binding changed, Eli explained it to me. So whenever the live binding changed, it swapped it out again. So basically nothing ever happened, which looked like it didn't work. So what Eli did is basically just apply it to the if helper and run it with gated expression, which is what the unless helper actually does. And he added some tests, so that's all working now. There is another issue with that helper. Where is it?
Can you explain that again, real quick? Can you show that code again?
So it swapped out fn and inverse whenever you called it, right? And apparently what happened, and then applies it to the if helper.
Yeah.
But
it would keep switching it every time or something?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I fully understood like how he tracked it down, but basically by swapping those out.
Yeah, I think the better way, especially because you're not creating an additional compute, might be just to create another object, and that way every time this would be run, you would just be converting to a new object and not like swapping the properties of the object in place. Does that make sense? Like I would just do an extent of. Huh?
It does not make sense at all. I'm not following you.
Okay, so well, the reason is computes are expensive. I would just do like var copied equals can.simple extend, which is a much faster version of jQuery's extend. If you guys want to use that, it's just the simple version. It's just for copying properties. We use that a lot internally because it's so much faster. Just copy the object and then swap the properties on your own object. I think the problem is, David, correct me if I'm wrong, is that options, it just keeps reversing its own every time, unless it's called, it keeps reversing its own properties because it's happening on the same object. But if you put it in a different object, every time unless it's called, that's fine. The original objects stay the same, so when you switch them, it's fine. You're switching it just once every time. Does that make sense? And that way you avoid the cost of creating a compute.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a better way of doing it.
Yeah, we can change that.
Yeah, I would.
This was another one that was kind of important. Basically, if you nest a component within an if statement, it's not going to be removed if it changed. The fix was pretty easy, actually. It was just one line, plus less code. So actually, I should probably merge that right away, because that one is good to go.
So the problem with this is just that I worked with this on Alexis. Basically, everything that was, well, it's kind of a tricky problem. So, you know, computes are hungry and will, anything that you read will, oh, actually, this was kind of the inverse problem. Basically, stash read will affect, you should never really, I mean, you should only really call read if you really know what you're doing, computes read, because it will call clear reading and add things to reading, and it might, things that you maybe had read before you call, like if you have code that is reading observables and then you call scope.read, it's possible that scope.read will clear those away. It does. I really should make it probably a protected method, not make it available for people to call, even ourselves, or private to just scope. And that's what it was doing. So like there was if was being called, the if helper was being called, but then the if helper was kind of eventually calling the code inside a tag hookup that was calling read, which was clearing all of the list of readings that compute was trying to read for, and that's why it was that's why it was breaking. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I forgot what I wanted to say next. I think if there isn't any other issue that anybody wanted to look into, I'm going to review most of them and merge them in once I verified the node list pull request and tested it and merged it in. We should be good to go for 212. So maybe not all of those are going to make it in 212, but we're going to have a 212 on Tuesday. So yeah, I think that's it from me. If there aren't any other questions or issues that we should look into. Okay, I think that's it for today.
Cool. Thanks, David.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.